30 minutes before anesthesia, I sat on a plastic chair outside pre-op, counting ceiling tiles and rehearsing grocery lists to keep my pulse steady. Then I overheard my daughter and her husband whisper about selling my house with papers I'd never seen, as if I wouldn't wake. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and lemon polish, the scent every hospital shares once the clocks drift past breakfast. My phone hummed against the thin pocket of my gown, but I kept it there, wedged like a secret. I was trying not to think about the incision or the cold silver breath of the operating room, except the voices at the corner made that impossible. She'll be under by noon, my son-in-law, Nate said, voice low but sure. You sign the healthcare proxy, we handle the paperwork, and I'll run the deed to the title office before close. Are you certain it works that way? My daughter, Lindsay, whispered. Mom gets prickly about signatures. It's fine, he answered. Durable power of attorney, springing, unspringing, no one checks. The buyer pays cash, we list Monday. Faster is kinder. The word kinder scraped me raw. I stared at my slippers, hospital issue blue that tried and failed to be cheerful. Springing POA, mine required 2 doctors to declare incapacity. Sedation wasn't incapacity, and I hadn't signed a deed, not to them, not to anyone. I pulled my phone free and tapped Martin Howell, my estate lawyer, the one who drinks tea and makes thorny documents behave. When he answered, I stepped into a shadow near the ice machine and lowered my voice. Martin, it's Elaine. I think they're about to use my proxy to sell my house while I'm asleep. He did not gasp. He did not lecture. He simply said, walk to the patient advocate, withdraw consent. I'll email a revocation letter in 5 minutes and conference the hospital counsel. Do not go under anesthesia. I walked. The advocate wore a sunflower pin and the calm smile of someone who believes every puzzle has an edge piece. I'm withdrawing consent, I said. There's a legal issue with my documents. Within minutes, the anesthesiologist materialized with a clipboard and a practiced frown. We're ready in or 3, he said. I'm not, I said. The advocate stood like a lighthouse. The charge nurse checked a tablet, frowned, and then nodded. The surgery stopped with the small sound of a pen being capped. But then my daughter rounded the corner like a weather front. Mom, what is going on? You need this repair, she said, eyes bright and frightened. We'll reschedule, I said. First I'll understand why I apparently agreed to sell my house. Nate tried a smile that belonged to a business card. We're protecting your equity, he said. Downsize, streamline care. It's what any good family would do. I am the family, I said, and I didn't authorize anything. The advocate led me to a small office with a window that viewed a brick wall. Martin joined by speakerphone. He read my POA language like a lullaby written by a bouncer, 2 physicians, written findings, incapacity only, no real property transfers without my contemporaneous consent. He faxed, yes, faxed. A revocation of consent and a hold on any attempts to use my proxies that day. The surgery slid from urgent to elective. I dressed in my jeans, laced my sneakers, and left through the automatic doors into a Denver noon edged with frost. Martin pulled to the curb in his eucalyptus-scented Prius and handed me a travel mug of peppermint tea. We have 48 hours before they try something bolder, he said. Weekends make fools brave. We move faster. In his office, he spread my documents across a walnut table. Your durable POA is fine, he said. Your healthcare proxy is fine. Your trust exists but has no assets yet. The weak link is inertia. They're trying to turn it into opportunity. How do we stop them? I asked. We cloud the road ahead, he said. First, we freeze title. He drafted a claimant's affidavit asserting a potential fraudulent conveyance and a pending investigation, something the county recorder understands like a weather alert. He emailed stop letters to every title company he knew. He also prepared a notice to my bank. No wires, cashier's checks, or account changes unless I appear in person with ID and a ridiculous passphrase we'd set months ago for fun. Bluebird jar. But then my phone pinged with a notification that made my lungs forget their job. Listing draft created. 1140 South Ivy Street. That was my house. A single photo showed my lemon yellow armchair and the braided rug my mother made. The draft price read $412,000, as is, quick close. Martin called the Denver County clerk and recorder. A clerk named Rosario said, We just received an electronic submission of a quitclaim deed from Elaine Bromley to Harbor Crest Holdings, LLC. It's flagged. The notary seal looks... Blurry. Do not record it, Martin said. We'll come now. At the recorder's counter, Rosario greeted us with the kind of smile you wear when your job is alphabetizing chaos. She pulled up the submission on her monitor and pointed. See this? The signature spells Elena with an extra A. The notary ID belongs to a woman I know. She won't like this. Rosario dialed the notary. A woman in a green coat arrived 20 minutes later, cheeks flushed from the cold and from anger. I did not notarize this, she said. Someone emailed asking me to confirm a stamp. I do not confirm stamps. I keep a journal. She showed us her logs. My name wasn't there. She wrote a sworn statement and scanned the email that had arrived from Nate at harborcrestholdings.com. The address used a mailbox at a UPS store on Colorado Boulevard. Martin's mouth did a thin line. People forget mailboxes have landlords, he murmured. We filed a notice of suspected fraud. On the screen, the attempted deed got a red banner that looked almost festive if you forgot what it meant. Rosario flagged my parcel so any future e-recordings would require in-person verification with a password. I chose yellow armchair. We drove straight to my bank. The manager, careful hair, careful words, met us by the glass doors. Miss Bromley, someone attempted a $48,000 wire last night using a scanned POA, he said. Our system held it for manual review because of your passphrase requirement. Do you recognize Harbor Crest Holdings? Unfortunately, I said. Please deny it and note there's an active fraud investigation. He nodded. We'll also issue a watch on the account. Any outbound transfer triggers a phone call to you and a hold until you appear. I'll need a police report. We went to the Denver Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit. A detective with kind eyes and a coffee mug that read, "Not today." Fraud listened without interrupting. He asked for copies of the attempted deed, the bank hold, the Zillow draft, and the emails. He gave me a case number and the blessing of being believed. By evening, my texts filled with Lindsay's anxious paragraphs. Mom, please. Nate says you're upset because anesthesia makes you suspicious. We're just trying to help. The market is good. I typed and deleted 3 replies before sending, "We will speak with attorneys present." But then Martin called with news that turned the calm into weather. They filed an emergency guardianship petition, he said. They claim you're refusing necessary care and making unsafe choices. Hearing Tuesday at 9. I sat very still. They want the court to declare me incompetent so they can run my life. They want access, Martin said. We'll bring sunlight. Preparation turned my weekend into a neat checklist. I pulled my pre-op notes, got the advocate's letter confirming I revoked consent, and highlighted the line that says sedation isn't incapacity. I printed emails, receipts, and a list of ordinary tasks. Property taxes paid, plates renewed, fence repaired. It felt silly until I pictured a courtroom where strangers judge competence using paper more than memory. I also scrolled through my voice memos. The hallway had recorded my hands shaking against my phone, but it had also recorded Nate's whisper, "She'll be under by noon. You sign the proxy. I'll run the deed." 9 seconds of clarity. I saved it 3 ways and emailed it to Martin with the subject line, "Insurance." Sunday afternoon, a new front blew in. My HOA president, a retired dentist named Cliff, rang Patty's doorbell while I was borrowing her screwdriver. He held a notice as if it were a bouquet. "Elaine, I got a complaint about unsafe clutter in your yard," he said. "They're asking for a welfare check and a fine." I pictured Lindsay's worried face and Nate's talent for paperwork. "Who filed it?" I asked. "Anonymous," he said, "but the email came from Harborcrest. I'm not blind." We walked to my house. The yard was a yard. A ladder leaned near the gutter where I'd cleaned leaves. A bin of mulch sat half full. Cliff laughed. "Your place is tidier than mine," he said. He wrote a letter stating no violations and slid it under my door with a date-stamped photo. But then Patty, who jokes only when she's furious, said, "We're installing cameras." By dinner, she had 2 battery units pointed at my driveway and front porch, feeding to my phone. The floodlights made the snow glitter like sugar. Monday morning, Adult Protective Services called. The caseworker's voice tried to be warm and steel at the same time. "We received a report of a vulnerable adult refusing care," she said. "May I visit?" "Yes," I said. "Come now, bring your clipboard and your best listening face." She arrived an hour later. I made tea and handed her a folder labeled Timeline. We walked through the documents. She took notes as carefully as a court reporter, then smiled. "Miss Bromley, APS closes as quickly as it opens when someone is capable and being exploited rather than neglecting themselves. I'm marking this as financial exploitation by others, referral to law enforcement. Thank you for making my job easy. Tuesday's hearing felt like stepping into a movie where I already knew the ending but had to sit through anyway. The judge wore rimless glasses and an expression that made everyone use their inside voice. Lindsay wrung her hands. Nate's jaw twitched like a clock. The judge asked for opening remarks. Martin stood. Your Honor, this is not a medical emergency, he said. It's a financial one. Petitioners attempted to record a fraudulent deed, initiate a $48,000 wire, and list Miss Bromley's home while she was scheduled for elective surgery. The law calls this what it is, exploitation. Lindsay's attorney said I was sometimes forgetful and described a story where I once left the oven on. He did not know that Patty had come over that night and we'd baked bread together on purpose. He did not know the smell of an argument you can win. I testified. I told the story plainly like reading to first graders, because that's what I did for 3 decades. I called things what they were. When it was time, Martin played the 9-second hallway recording. Nate turned the color of paper. Rosario testified about the red banner fraud notice. The notary in the green coat held up her journal and said, I do things by the book and this wasn't in the book, the bank manager explained, the blocked wire and the bluebird jar protocol. The patient advocate described my revocation of consent. The APS worker described her closure findings. Cliff, the HOA dentist, told a surprisingly entertaining story about mulch and anonymous emails. The judge leaned back, steepled her fingers, and spoke as if choosing bricks. She denied the guardianship with prejudice. She suspended any use of my POA pending a separate review, citing credible evidence of attempted misuse. She issued a temporary restraining order prohibiting Lindsay and Nate from entering my property or contacting my bank. She referred the matter to the district attorney's elder exploitation unit, and she ordered petitioners to pay my attorney's fees, subject to Martin's affidavit. But then the judge did something small and perfect. She looked at me and said, Miss Bromley, do you intend to reschedule your surgery? Yes, Your Honor, I said, on my schedule, with my consent. Good, she said. Court encourages healthy hernias, but only with healthy paperwork. The hallway outside the courtroom felt wider when we stepped into it. Lindsay stopped 5 feet from me like there was an invisible chalk line. I'm sorry, she said, voice tiny. Nate said this was how families do it now. He said we'd lose money if we waited. He made everything feel like a deadline. Urgency is a sales trick, I said. Love is patient. Paperwork can be too. Nate walked past us to the elevator, phone pressed to his ear. I heard him say attorney and misunderstanding, words people use when the ship has already met the iceberg. He didn't look back. I wanted to hug my daughter. I wanted to shake her. I did neither. We'll talk, I said. Without him, life didn't turn postcard pretty. It became a list. Martin funded my living trust, reworked the POA to require 2 doctors and court acknowledgement, and added passwords at the recorder and bank. I froze my credit, changed the mailbox, and set new locks. Then I angled the lemon chair toward the window because sun helps. Security is boring until it saves your life. I copied the new codes to an index card and slid it under the teapot. Practical, not paranoid. Truly. The detective called weekly. He pulled phone records and got a warrant for Harborcrest's UPS mailbox. Inside, they found unopened mail addressed to me. Insurance offers, a county notice, and a typed list titled Elaine Timeline, with bullet points about my physical therapy appointments and the day I take my trash to the alley. The paper smelled like cheap toner and gall. Lindsay met me for coffee on Colfax. She apologized without excuses. I accepted without pretending it hadn't hurt. We set tape measure boundaries. She won't manage my money or house. I'll share medical plans when I want input. We booked counseling. When she said Nate called my boundaries hostile, I laughed. Sometimes dignity sounds like a closing door. But then a certified letter arrived. Harborcrest, through an attorney whose email signature included 3 unnecessary adjectives, claimed I had interfered with a lawful transaction and owed them $12,000 for due diligence expenses. Martin chuckled and said, the bluff invoice. He drafted a response. Any further contact will be considered harassment and extortion. Preserve all documents. Expect a counterclaim. The DA filed charges anyway. Attempted theft, criminal impersonation, offering a false instrument for recording. Nate took a plea to avoid trial. He paid restitution totaling $32,600, my legal fees to date, the bank's forensic costs, and the title company's examiner time. He also accepted a 5-year order barring him from acting as a fiduciary for anyone not named Nate. Meanwhile, I kept living. I shoveled snow, baked banana bread, and fixed a wobbly stair with a new bracket. Patty came over with a casserole the size of Vermont and said I looked like a woman who had outrun a storm. I told her storms don't get outrun, they get named and weathered. She said, "Then call this one Nate," and we both laughed until we hiccuped. Around the story's midpoint, my life's, not the episode's, I discovered a leverage I hadn't noticed. In a folder in my hall closet, I found copies of the checks I'd written to help Lindsay and Nate with their down payment 3 years ago. $20,000 labeled gift conditional. On the memo line, Martin had insisted I write a condition, forgiven after 5 years provided borrower does not exploit lender. It had felt dramatic then, almost silly. It felt like a key now. Martin sent a letter demanding repayment because the condition failed in spectacular fashion. Nate's attorney replied that the memo line carried no legal weight. Martin responded with a link to a Colorado case that said sometimes a memo line is a slingshot. 2 weeks later, a cashier's check arrived for the full amount plus interest to avoid litigation. I bought Patty a snowblower and myself a tea kettle that whistles like a train. The surgery, when I finally rescheduled it, happened in late March. I checked in at dawn. The same advocate with the sunflower pin waved. The anesthesiologist asked me to recite my name and birthday. The OR nurse tucked a warm blanket under my knees. I signed consent forms while wide awake, read each line aloud, and initialed like someone drawing small fences. The lights blurred, the world softened. I went under on my terms. I woke to Patty's voice telling a nurse that I used to grade papers with a red pen so fierce even her cat behaved. The surgeon said the repair was clean. The pain was the kind people warn you will be bad, and then turns out manageable if you respect it. The next day, Lindsay brought soup and ginger ale and did not hover. Recovery makes you inefficient and attentive. I measured time by pain meds, naps, and the way afternoon light crawled across the floor. I wrote a list titled Lessons and put it on my fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. It read, 1. When something feels urgent, ask who benefits. 2. Record more than you remember. 3. Love your people with boundaries that hold. But then the detective called with a question that tightened my chest. Did you ever authorize a deposit to a place called Rose Willow Care? He asked. No, I said. What is that? An assisted living facility in Aurora, he said. They received a $3,000 deposit from Harborcrest with a note. Hold room for EB post-surgery. They also have an intake packet with your name filled out in someone else's handwriting. I sat down at my kitchen table and traced the grain with my finger. They were going to move me while I slept, I said. We drove to Rose Willow. The administrator showed an intake packet filled out in handwriting that slanted wrong and listed Nate as financial manager. The bank had already flagged the $3,000 deposit after the DA's alerts. The facility returned the money to the sender of record and apologized, leaving me with a file of proof and a steadier breath. Martin's eyebrows reached a height I had not seen before. He drafted a civil complaint for tortious interference and intentional infliction of emotional distress, not to file, at least not yet, but to keep in a drawer like a smoke detector battery. We also added a clause to my trust. If any beneficiary attempts to exert undue influence, their share becomes $1. I called it my anti-Nate clause. Lindsay laughed, then winced, then nodded. Spring found Denver softening, the snow turning to rivulets that sang down gutters. I walked the block slowly, carrying a cane mostly for theater. Neighbors waved. I noticed small things, the way the mail carrier straightened every porch mat, the cardinal that liked my maple tree, the quiet bravery of crocuses. Safety felt like an armchair I'd finally moved to the right place. Lindsay and I went to counseling. The therapist talked about triangles, urgency as a drug, and money as weather. Lindsay admitted debt made her panic and that she'd ignored small wrongs because big plans felt better. I admitted I'd assumed my daughter would always pick me first. We practiced sitting through silence without rescuing each other. Consequences took their time. A certified order approved $18,600 in fees payable by Lindsay and Nate in 30 days. When they missed it, the judge imposed a $500 daily fine. The check arrived overnight with a grudging note, satisfied under protest. Watching accountability show up by mail felt like a tiny standing ovation. I replaced my front door lock with a smart one that chimes politely and keeps better records than I do. I gave Patty, Lindsay, and Martin codes. I set my own code to a number only I would remember, the year I bought the lemon armchair at a thrift store and discovered I could reupholster Joy. Sometimes I still think about the hallway outside pre-op, the way ceiling tiles make a person small. I remember my pulse beating in my throat and the taste of metal fear. I remember choosing to stand. The choice wasn't dramatic, it was a sentence said in a calm voice. I withdraw consent. It built a path from that plastic chair to this bright room where my plants elbow for space on the windowsill. One afternoon in June, the detective called one last time. Case closed, he said. He pled. The court ordered him to complete a financial ethics course and community service at a senior center. Sometimes the universe writes jokes. I hope they assign him to shred old POA forms, I said. With safety scissors, Lindsay sold her condo after the divorce. Yes, it happened, and moved to an apartment near Washington Park. We walk there sometimes, and she asks me to tell stories from my classroom days. She likes the one about the kid who hid a goldfish in his desk and fed it gummy bears. I like the one about the girl who wrote a letter to the principal asking for longer recess and convinced him by citing weather data. Children know about leverage before anyone teaches the word. In August, I taught Lindsay to reupholster a chair. We chose fabric the color of thunderheads and laughed when the staple gun misfired. We ate takeout dumplings on the floor and talked about the way apologies are furniture. You have to build them, and they have to bear weight. Once, late at night, I listened to the 9-second hallway recording again. I expected anger to bloom. Instead, I felt gratitude for the tiny brave part of me that pressed record while my knees knocked. I deleted the file after I realized I no longer needed it to feel safe. I'd built other anchors, documents, boundaries, people who answer the phone, chairs that face the light. The lemon armchair sits where the morning sun lands first. On cold days, I throw a wool blanket over my legs and work the crossword in pen because some risks are worth it. On warm evenings, I open the back door and let the scent of tomato vines into the kitchen. I keep my tea in a blue jar labeled in my handwriting because nobody else gets to label my life ever again. If you were waiting for the part where everything returns to normal, I can't give you that. I can tell you the house is mine, recorded and real, held in a trust that smiles when paperwork tries to misbehave. I can tell you my bank knows my voice, my county knows my password, and my daughter knows my boundaries. I can tell you I rescheduled surgery and woke up to the same ceiling tiles, which somehow seemed kinder because I'd chosen them. The last thing my surgeon said at follow-up was, "You're healing on schedule." I liked the phrase. Life is a calendar we get to write in pen sometimes. Where someone else penciled a plan for my future, I wrote my own name across the square and underlined it twice. I still count things when I'm nervous. But now I count the objects I control: consent, signature, keys, codes, the lemon chair, the minutes between impulse and action. When the world pushes urgency into my hands, I set it down like a hot pan and ask whether it belongs to me. Usually it doesn't. And if a voice ever whispers again outside a doorway I'm about to enter, I know exactly what I'll do. I'll stand up. I'll clear my throat. I'll say the sentence that started all this. Then I'll call the people who know how to build fences out of words and make wolves bounce off red banners. 30 minutes before surgery, I was a woman counting ceiling tiles to avoid counting threats. 30 minutes after, I was a woman counting protections. That's not a miracle. It's paperwork, peppermint tea, and the courage to press record when the world expects you to sleep.